No real intro for this video, just going to go right into it. Round 2 is just starting, so I'm going to talk about some players that didn't do too well in round 1. CJ McCollum was not good for the Blazers in round 1 versus the Denver Nuggets. When you can't significantly outplay Monte Morris, a backup point guard, and when Austin Rivers is making more clutch shots than you in the fourth quarter, then I don't even know what to say. The Nuggets have the worst backcourt in the playoffs, and the Blazers should have been able to make that a Game 7. If you look over CJ's stats, you might think CJ didn't play too bad, but his defense was even worse than usual. A lot of turnovers were at some of the worst times during the game. He was not a reliable number 2 option for Dame, and he couldn't give them some help in Game 5 when Dame scored over 50. This is just what you get with CJ McCollum. He takes a lot of difficult shots, he's not putting pressure on the basket, and he doesn't get to the rim or the free throw line, so if he goes cold, he's not impacting the game. It gets talked about all the time. You hear after every postseason, it's time to trade CJ McCollum, but you look around the league and you're saying, where are you going to trade him to? His salary per year is one of the highest in the league, and there's only a dozen or so players you can trade him with, and most of those teams aren't going to want a 6'3" shooting guard that doesn't get to the free throw line and can't play defense. I really wish Luka Doncic had a better number 2 option because you would feel a lot more confident about the Mavs going forward. Kristaps Porzingis did not have a good round 1 versus the LA Clippers. He has not made an impact with his defense. I watched Porzingis get beat on back cuts by Nick Batum a couple times in the third quarter of Game 5. And the funny thing is, you could see that back cut coming, but KP just didn't see it. And on offense, he hasn't been taking advantage of his size inside. There was one play where Porzingis was posted up on Rondo, and he didn't even try to back him down, and then he couldn't even cleanly shoot the jumper over him. I try to be somewhat balanced with Porzingis because it's hard to run around and keep up with NBA players on the perimeter when you're like 7'3", but man, he does some bizarre things on the court that hurts the Mavs. The reason he can't post up well on these smaller players is because guys can get underneath his lower body and move him. It's crazy because with the Knicks, he was awesome, he was a good rim protector, but now he's not feared there at all. Paul George dropped a quote after Game 3 saying he's comfortable getting to the rim in this series because the Mavs have no rim protector. I mean, they had to start Boban because their 7'3" power forward isn't punishing the Clippers with his size. Staying with the Mavericks, another player who had a rough round 1 was Josh Richardson. One way you can really tell Richardson was struggling to impact the game is just looking at his minutes per game in the playoffs. In Miami, he was getting 34 minutes per game in the regular season. In the playoffs with Philly, he was getting 36 minutes per game. This series against the Clippers, he's at 15 minutes per game. That's a massive drop-off from the previous seasons. What's that Westbrook quote when he's talking about Patrick Beverley on defense? He tricked y'all. Well, yeah, Josh Richardson tricked me. I really thought during that little stretch in Miami where he was used as a ball handler, he was going to be an impact player on a playoff team. I liked him being in Philly before he played with them. And even after his disappointing season with the Sixers, I was still saying, oh, he can help the Mavs with his defense and secondary playmaking. The Mavs have more spacing, Luka will open it up for him. But no, he hasn't been doing any type of positive dribble drive creation for the Mavs like I thought he could. You can't trust him with the ball, and he's having trouble on defense at times, and he was brought in for his defense. That swap trade with the Sixers for Seth Curry is not looking good now. He's a free agent this summer, so it's going to be interesting to see what type of contract he gets after not improving as a player in these last 2 years. Julius Randle returned back to his New Orleans Pelicans form against the Atlanta Hawks in the playoffs. Even though he improved in pretty much every aspect of his game, and his stats against the Hawks during the regular season were amazing, I had a feeling he might have playoff trouble because he was turnover prone and he forced a lot of tough shots. And when you factor in locked-in defenses and playoff scouting, Julius could struggle, but I did not think it would be this bad. I really thought he turned a corner. He went right back to the old Julius Randle in the playoffs. I think I said to myself, what in the world is Julius Randle doing like 20 times against the Hawks? I'm asking myself, why can't he take advantage of these mismatches, or why isn't he attacking Trae Young? The playoffs highlight your weaknesses, and it's clear that Randle is not a number 1 option. I don't know how many of those people were out there, but there shouldn't be any left. He needs a guard to play off of that's better than him. The Knicks were built on their defense. They don't have a lot of perimeter scoring. It's kind of hard to do much on offense when the entire team doesn't trust your shooting and they can just focus in on Julius Randle and Derrick Rose. I thought Julius had opportunities to get guys in foul trouble. That's what you have to do sometimes when certain things are taken away from you. 30% from the field, more turnovers per game than assists per game, and falling in love with the outside shot is what ruined Julius against the Hawks. Shake Milton had a terrible first round series for the Sixers. He finished the series averaging only 3 points per game. His shooting percentages were awful and his minutes started to get cut by the end of the series. If you remember last year, he went off in that game against the Clippers and people thought he could be the starting guard in the lineup next to Ben Simmons. He had people excited because of his shooting and Philly needed that. One of Philly's big adjustments in the bubble playoffs versus Boston was moving him into the starting lineup, and he shot pretty well. I'm recording this before Game 1 versus Atlanta, so I'm not too sure how many minutes he's going to get, but it's going to be hard for Doc Rivers to trust him in these rounds against real teams. Tyrese Maxey and Furkan Korkmaz gave Philly some scoring punch in Games 4 and 5 versus Washington. Maxey looks a lot more confident with his dribble, and honestly he might be a better option than Shake Milton going forward. The next player on here is Davis Bertans. He did not have a good round 1 versus the Philadelphia 76ers. You look at the stats and you see, oh, he shot decent from 3. He had a pretty good game 4. But every time Bertans makes a shot, he's probably giving up points on the other end. He didn't do anything well in that series besides make threes in 2 of the games. $15 million a year is a lot for someone who does nothing but take difficult threes. He wasn't helping the Wizards with his passing, defense, rebounding, or dribbling. Now, is he the main problem? No, the roster isn't that great. They're a play-in team against the number 1 seed, but Bertans made it pretty easy for Philly to get shots. He was really bad in Game 2. Dennis Schroder was the starting point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers in the playoffs, and he had a 0-point game in Game 5. One thing that we found out about Schroder is that his season with the Oklahoma City Thunder was an outlier 3-point shooting season for him. He's not that guy from the 3-point line that we thought last year. You thought he would be able to open up things versus Phoenix, but he doesn't have the greatest IQ when passing out of a pick and roll. He had a bunch of turnovers in those situations. He played some defense in this series, but he didn't look confident as a scorer. I mean, I'm watching Reggie Jackson from the Clippers and Mike James on the Brooklyn Nets play with crazy confidence. They have the mindset of, I'm in the NBA, I'm just as good as any of these guys. I'm not sure why, but Schroder looked hesitant when he's attempting threes at certain times during the series when he was open. I remember there was one play where DeAndre Ayton switched on to him, and Ayton was basically begging Schroder to shoot the 3. And the worst part of all of this is he turned down an $84 million contract extension from the Lakers in the middle of the year. He's a free agent this summer, and I don't know many fans who are excited about possibly bringing in Dennis Schroder, even if they have a point guard problem. I think the Lakers kind of have to re-sign him because they need the talent at point guard, or they can just use him in a sign and trade, or at least play with him for a few months, then trade him at the deadline. Talking about another Laker, Kyle Kuzma, he had a terrible round 1 versus the Suns. The funny part is that he actually made some strides defensively this past year and accepted his role as an off-the-bench guy during the regular season. He didn't have as many moments where you say to yourself, what is he doing on the court? But you had a lot of those watching him play against Phoenix. He couldn't hit a wide open shot, turned the ball over a few times. He shot 29% from the field and 17% from the 3-point line. Kuzma is who he is at this point. He's a role player, which is fine. But the Lakers are going to try to upgrade this summer on Anthony Davis and LeBron. He has a tradable contract because of his salary number, but he's not good enough to where the Lakers can get back a clearly better player. I feel bad for even having Kemba Walker in this video. He wasn't good for most of the season. He was in and out of the lineup trying to get healthy. We knew the Celtics had no chance against the Nets, and predictably, he was not good against the Nets in the playoffs. I've mentioned this before and I'm going to keep bringing it up. If part of your offense as a guard is breaking people down off the dribble and using your speed and agility to create separation, and that goes away just a little bit, now because he's having a hard time getting to the hoop, Kemba is relying on his jump shot the whole time. Teams are going to be comfortable with him on the court just shooting jump shots because he's not putting pressure on the rim. In Charlotte, that's what made Kemba dangerous when you combine his shiftiness and his 3-point shooting. He shot 18% from the field in the 3 games against Brooklyn, which is like insane. I'm sure the Celtics are going to try to trade Kemba this summer, but you look around the league and you say, who is taking in this massive salary number? Jimmy Butler is the last player on here. I talked about him in my previous video. He was absolutely awful against the Bucks. One of the ways Miami was going to win this series is if they could take Brook Lopez off the floor. Lopez stays near the rim on defense and doesn't come out to the perimeter often, so you can make the Bucks pay by making outside shots, and if you have that 16 or 17 foot jump shot, that is open for you. Jimmy couldn't take advantage of those open spots. He would get into the space, dribble around, and the Bucks would eventually get a stop. It's weird because he used to have a pull-up jump shot he used to go to in Chicago and Minnesota. Of course, Jimmy was doing his passing stuff versus Milwaukee. We know Jimmy has good vision as a passer, but with the way teams are scoring now with the increased pace, you can't be the highest paid guy on your team, scoring 14 points and shooting 30% from the field. I know we just had a great playoff run 8 months ago, but people are going to remember this one when they're making player rankings. And I'm a big Jimmy fan, so it was tough seeing him go out like this. Not being able to get one game against the Milwaukee Bucks is why he's not a tier 1 superstar. And that's it for me. Appreciate it if you made it to the end of this one. Let me know if you would add another player into this video, and just let me know how you're feeling about this video down in the comments in general. And if you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like, as it does help the channel do better, and consider subscribing if you want to see more from me.